healing, quote unquote, and I use that in parentheses because I just said that I don't believe that there is such thing as the need for healing or even forgiveness. That's radical forgiveness, to understand that there's nothing really to forgive because everything's happening for us and not to us. If we can come from that place of taking full responsibility for everything that's happened in our lives, that we've somehow attracted it or manifested it from some place of either pre-programmed consciousness or what we've learned, that we can go easy on ourselves. We can give ourselves a break knowing that we come by whoever we are, whatever we think and feel, very, very honestly. But now we have no excuse when we have the knowledge and the understanding that the brain's neuroplastic, and when we optimize the nervous system, we can change the course of our lives. And again, it's not about fixing or transforming. Remember, it's about increasing the quality or changing the quality of the experience we're having in this moment. However people define that. That could be whatever it looks like out there. It doesn't matter what you do. You could do nothing and be much more at peace, in love, and in joy than somebody who's doing 1,000 things that we all have FOMO about, that we're seeing on Facebook, and we look at somebody else's life and go, damn, I wish my life was like that. My life was that exciting. I was that beautiful. I had that many friends. My car looked like that. Those people could be the most miserable people in the world, hanging their hats again on all of those things that they do and say that they are, because they're so insecure. They have no sense of self-worth that's further past their skin and what they have. And so to be able to move into that awareness that they're worthy, that they're valid, that their life matters, that they're beautiful, and that they can, quote unquote, heal by understanding that there's nothing to heal, that they're perfect, complete, and whole. And the only way to get there is by practicing unconditional self-acceptance.
So that was the passionate and the enthusiastic Dr. Zachary Cashin, and he is today's guest on the Alter Your Health podcast. This podcast is your source of information and inspiration to promote the holistic transformation of your health and the health of our planet. And my name is Dr. Benjamin Alter. I'm a licensed naturopathic physician and host of this podcast. I practice holistic lifestyle medicine worldwide online. Find out more and get yourself scheduled for a complimentary 15-minute exploratory consultation at www.alter.health. I'm so excited to introduce you to today's guest, Dr. Zach. He is full of wisdom, full of passion, full of inspiration, full of knowledge to share, and he does so really brilliantly and articulately in today's conversation. Dr. Zach is a local chiropractor, but let me tell you something. He is not your typical chiropractor. He is not your typical doctor. He's not your typical human. He is really a special guy. And we connected soon after moving here locally to Carbondale, Colorado. And we just hit it off. It turns out we are on the same wavelength in so many ways, and that is really represented and reflected in the nature of today's conversation. Dr. Zach shares his healing journey, how he has really devoted his life to recovery in his health. He was born really sick, it turns out. I had no idea, but he has been on this healing journey throughout the extent of his life. And when we're talking about the healing journey, as you guys know, we're not just talking about optimizing physical form and function, your blood work, your biomarkers, all of these things. That sort of stuff is important, absolutely 100%. But what we're talking about is living your fullest potential, mental health, spiritual health, connecting with your purpose. And one thing that I really appreciate in this conversation is the focus on addressing the primary subluxation that we all suffer from to some extent, and that's the one that exists right between our ears, in the realm of our thoughts. So subluxation, for those of you who don't know, is kind of a misalignment of our spine. So we talk all about kind of spinal health, the health of your nervous system, all things on the physical level with regard to your physical body and alignment optimally. But we also talk about alignment with your soul and living on purpose and how essential that is and how to really address that subluxation that exists for so many of us so much of the time between the ears. So before we dive into this conversation, I just invite new and old listeners alike to take 5 or 10 seconds, however long it does take, to hit the subscribe button, leave a rating, leave a comment, leave a review, wherever you're tuning in from, whether it's on the YouTube video, whether it's on iTunes or Spotify or any other platform. I so appreciate your presence. I would also so appreciate if you take the 5 or 10 seconds to send this episode or any other off to a friend, a loved one, someone who would benefit from connecting with this information. Give them a little dose, a little shot of inspiration in their life. That's what it's all about. Spreading the love, spreading the positive vibrations. That's my mission, and thanks for supporting me in achieving it. So let's all sit back, put your feet on the ground, maybe take a breath, receive a breath, and enjoy this wonderful conversation with our guest, Dr. Zachary Cashin. All right, Dr. Zach Cashin, welcome to the Alter Your Health podcast. Really happy that we've made the time to connect and sit down and dive into some stuff here.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. I'm honored.
Yeah, and I'm so happy to kind of lure you into the space. Exciting to know that you've got some kind of ideas about doing a podcast or something along those lines of your own. So maybe now that it's on the record, maybe that'll kind of nudge you.
It's official. It's out in cyberspace now.
Yeah, but
unavoidable.
But anyways, yeah, really excited to get to know about the work that you do a little bit more intimately, even though I have experienced it and do kind of to some degree know it in my body. But how did you get to this time and space?
Oh, wow. That's a huge open-ended question. Yeah, all through effort to understand my own suffering, if you will, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, from imprinting from a very early age of neglect, abandonment, and physical ill health that I was born into this world with. And without getting too far into it, but I had like a staph infection when I was born in the hospital, sickly from the moment I was born, and yet they pumped me full of vaccinations and never breastfed. And, so as a result of low-level ill health, my entire life I kept searching. And back in the 60s, alternative medicine wasn't really a mainstay and an option.
Where did you
for
grow
American housewives in the Midwest, Michigan,
yeah.
Ohio.
Yeah.
My mother did the best she could, with the nutrition at the time, which was meatloaf and frozen meals and TV dinners, and a single mother raising 3 kids, not an easy thing to do, especially in a healthy way, with what healthcare was basically imposing upon the free will of the people, and not knowing that there was alternatives and options because they really weren't available, and the conversation wasn't mainstream. Even though Bernard Jensen and some of those pioneers, Pablo Irola, some of the pioneers in human nutrition, were into it, but it wasn't mainstream knowledge for most people.
Yeah. So what was your first kind of glimpse of maybe alternative medicine, holistic health that inspired you to come into the space?
Yeah. Well, I remember, I think in college in the University of Colorado, I had the staph infection keep coming back, and I would have massive outbreaks of boils on my body, and the doctors would lance it and put me on more and more antibiotics, right? I mean, my whole entire childhood was spent on antibiotics. There was no conversation about gut microbiome, and how that, deleteriously affected the
or
health.
why these staph infections were,
even there in the first
erupting
place.
in the first place.
And that goes, right, that ultimately leads to cause and effect, right? That ultimately leads to the understanding of the immune system, right? And all the onslaughts in the environment and diet and, psychologically, and all these things that affect, our body's ability to self-heal and self-regulate, right? And all the things that we're doing that are counter to health and wellness that were being imposed on us, by our healthcare practitioners, and the environment and society. I mean, it was cool to smoke, I mean, they advertised it all over. It was cool to drink. It was advertised everywhere. So it wasn't, people didn't understand cause and effect with health, with lifestyle choices and its ultimate effect on our health and well-being. So in college, I finally was tired of going to allopathic medicines, and somebody mentioned to me a nutritionist. And so I went to a nutritionist, and he completely evaluated my diet. I can't remember everything he did, but he radically changed my diet, did detoxification processes with me, including colon hydrotherapy, getting out food allergies and avoiding them in my diet. And basically, he turned my health around completely. So, yay, nutritionists.
Yeah, so that was in college. And
Yeah.
I'm sure that wasn't easy because you'd had, at that point, 20 years or whatever, kind of forming habits and relationships with food and what is normal. So was that like easy for you to create new habits at that point in time?
I would say yes with an asterisk, because I was motivated.
Right. There
You know
was
what I mean?
There was enough kind of, yeah, exactly.
And-
suffering and motivation.
I
Yeah.
was in Boulder, Colorado.
So it was kind of easy.
Oh yeah, there was the Pearls. What was the restaurant that they used to have there? Good Earth restaurant. It started. The whole Good Earth tea is still around.
Yeah.
And so I would go there and eat beans and rice and veggies and tofu and
Organic food, yeah.
organic food, and even organic food wasn't even that big back then in the early '80s. But just at least whole foods,
Yeah.
right? Plant-based foods and diet, and moving toward vegetarianism and things like that, and just moving away toward high meat diets and things like the high processed foods. So, and then, I hooked up with a woman named Hannah Kroger, who ran like basically the first health food store in this country. She was an Auschwitz survivor.
Was that Kroger, like Kroger,
Hannah
like
Kroger.
the brand?
Yes, the brand of herbs that is still available today.
Yeah.
And her and I became very close. She had a little healing church. She was also a minister, and people would come to her services on Sunday, and then afterwards line up, sometimes 60, 50, 100 people long, waiting for her to use her pendulum to diagnose what's going on with them and treat them with herbs and homeopathic remedies.
Wow, this is all in Boulder.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then when was the first chiropractor coming into your life?
Well, in school, I was training for a climbing expedition in Alaska, and I was doing a ski mountaineering trip on Long's Peak, and I fell and really, really hurt my ankle. We were supposed to leave for Alaska in 3 weeks. And I couldn't walk. I was in the hospital. I was x-rayed, MRI'd. They couldn't find anything other than torn ligaments and a strain injury, no dislocations, no fractures, et cetera. And somebody suggests I go to a chiropractor. And I'm like, well, why would I go to a chiropractor, for this knee, ankle, foot injury? So I went to him, and within 2 weeks, I was running. And I'm like, I don't understand this. How can this have happened?
At that point in time, I'm sure you were an active guy. Had you ever had injuries? Like, what was your experience with injuries and healing at that point in your life?
Probably just immobilization, pain relievers, anti-inflammatories.
And just sit it out for weeks to months. And
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
And so you had this experience of rapid healing with the help of a chiropractor.
Right, but the underlying and overlying concept was your knee will heal, but it will heal and your ankle will heal, but they will heal much faster if your nervous system is optimized.
That was educated by your chiropractor?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and that's chiropractic.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
I think that, and obviously we're going to get into that, I hope. But I think that the conventional or like the conventional consumer who goes to a chiropractor, it's all about bones and ligaments and alignment, and not a lot of talk about the nervous system.
Yeah.
I mean, for my first chiropractor experience, my neck was like this, and I was like, put my neck back on straight, and they did.
Yeah, make the pain go away.
Right.
And you can reduce 20% of the misaligned vertebrae that's stuck and fixated out of place, which is called a subluxation, right? Sub meaning less than, a luxation meaning a total dislocation. It's a medical term for a dislocated joint, but a subluxation is just
quite
less than.
fully.
Right. And so when the spine and the vertebrae get subluxated, right, it can cause pressure on the nerve that's exiting between the two vertebrae and cause pressure. Even they found that even 5 millimeters of mercury of pressure, right, can create what are called aberrant action potentials. In other words, send a signal down the nerve that's not supposed to be going down the nerve. They're supposed to be initiated from the brain. So if you've got something peripherally pushing on that nerve, it's going to create a nerve impulse that's going to tell an organ system to maybe secrete too much or not enough of an enzyme or something that it's supposed to be secreting.
Right.
Or if it goes to a muscle, it could tell the muscle to contract too much, where you get hypertonicity or too much pulling or tension
Yeah.
on the, and you may not even feel it unless I touch it, called palpation, and all of a sudden you go, oh my God, that's sore. And then you didn't know it, but I felt it, and it's all twingy, and
There's a reason for that.
there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
And so, people get an adjustment, and, they remove 20% of that interference, and 80% of the symptoms go away. And so many people are so fixated on the symptom being gone that if there's no pain, there's no problem. And that couldn't be further from the truth. Less than 10% of the entire nervous system is dedicated to sensation. And that's all sensation combined. Touch, taste, ears, eyes, nose, throat, soft touch, light touch. All of that combined is less than 10% of the entire nervous system. That's why you can get diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and be in stage 4 and have less than 30 days to live, because there's no real pain receptors associated with that organ system. Right. And it can be very sick and you have no symptoms until it's too late.
So the rest of the 90% of the nerves that are running through our bodies, they are carrying information about like what should be happening.
It's the autonomic nervous system, correct?
It's subliminal, beyond our conscious awareness.
Right.
Our
it's autonomic,
yeah.
Right? And it's broken into two parts, right? The sympathetic,
right,
fight or flight, or the parasympathetic, which is rest and digest.
And to that, I usually add heal.
Oh yeah, rest and digest and heal. When you're resting, you're healing.
Because a lot of people they're cognizant of parasympathetic, sympathetic, but they don't understand, like, oh, I've actually have to be in this state in order for my body to heal. Because,
right,
I love talking with chiropractors because there's such a commonality philosophically to naturopathic medicine, and just the basic understanding that the body is healing itself, and we're just trying to promote that self-healing.
Right.
But I have to remind people that the environment needs to be optimized, and that often includes, among other things, the nervous system, the autonomic nervous system.
Well, and
what are you looking up?
A couple of things that I had prepared for this conversation. Cool. And God, I could, we could talk for hours.
For sure.
But to throw out, this was originally, God, I want to share all of this. It was originally, the credit was given to Edison, and I'm sure you're familiar with this. I'm not quite sure why it's not where I thought it was.
Sure, it'll come up, come back up.
So the underlying premise of chiropractic is that, well, I mean, it's an art, a science, and a philosophy. And so a lot of the allopathic medical, machine, when chiropractic got started, were very threatened by us because, well, first of all, it was easy for them to ridicule us and say we're quacks because of our philosophical construct, because it was based on what now has been proven through quantum physics and the study of neuroscience and neuroplasticity and epigenetics to be true, right? We've held this overlying philosophical construct that we believe to be true. And now, just like all the mystical teachings,
right? Just like all
2,000, 5,000 years ago,
Chinese
are now being
medicine, Ayurveda, like just because they've been practiced for 5,000 or more years without any scientific understanding of what the heck is going on, doesn't mean it's not efficacious and doesn't have a place in the world.
Bingo. Yeah. And the funny thing is all of that science is now proving how all of that works.
And it's like, wow.
But the problem is the programming is already there in people's minds.
Yeah.
And back to neuroplasticity, what fires together wires together. We are wired and programmed to have certain belief systems through media, through commercials, right? Yeah. Through medical doctors, through everything, that this is the way it is. And it takes a while. And it has to be experiential. It cannot be just book knowledge or hearsay. People have to get to a place of crisis, get no response from the mainstream approach to whatever it is we're talking about, health and healing, mentally, emotionally, physically, or spiritually. And take the risk to try something alternative and then have a direct experience of that in a healing event in their lives.
Totally.
That wires massively new neurons for that concept of, right, of life.
Yeah.
And until you have it and you can link more and more of those experiences together to overcome the old programming, then it's that tipping point, the 100th monkey, whatever you want to call it, before people get it individually, and then collectively we start getting it as a community, as a country, and as a planet, right?
Totally. And I love how you just pointed out the fact that, using the word experience, because I think people are looking for that experience, seeking that experience, and doing so by picking up book after book, podcast after podcast,
Right.
whatever it is, trying to evoke an experience intellectually
Yes.
and conceptually.
Yes.
And that's not where experiences come from. And I think we all know that, but still, it's like we can't force the experience, really, right?
No, no.
Universe has aligned things for you to have your experiences and healings and insights and awareness and growth, and we're all on that.
Right. We're on that continuum, right? That's why we're here, right? And the hard part for me is because where I am in my path, right, is very existential. And yet I've come full circle to the scientific validation of all the things that I believe in, right? Because when Carl Jung was interviewed 6 weeks before he died by the BBC, the interviewer looked him straight in the eye and said, "So, Dr. Jung, do you believe in God?" And Dr. Jung looked at him and just kind of with this smile and took off his glasses and looked at him and said, "Believe?"
You're right. Oh,
And,
yeah.
and he goes, "Believe." And then he got within 2 inches of him and said, "I know."
Right.
And every hair on my body stood up. That's the experiential aspect we're talking about.
Right. You can't read a book to tell you.
No, you
what
have
God- yeah.
experienced that, right? That transformational moment in your life where you feel or experience something greater than yourself, inside and outside of yourself, that is so real that it's more real than you and I sitting here right now. And so back to the chiropractic philosophical, art and science is that we talk about innate intelligence, right? That there is this an innate intelligence within you, right? And the medical doctors, the allopathic model talks about the circulatory system, the respiratory system, and all these systems of the body, but they don't talk about what it is that animates living tissue. What is that makes the heart all of a sudden start beating? Why is it then that study after study, when they measured a human body just before death and right after death, they did a study, and like consistently, I can't remember, I think it was 28 grams or something. They were less, they weighed less right after death. So is that the weight? Is that the mass of the soul? Because if everything's energy, right, and everything has some type of atomic mass, why is it that it was so consistent, no matter if you're a 500-pound man or a 90-pound woman, that you were this exact many grams lighter as soon as, right, the heart stopped beating and, it was gone. So is that the soul leaving the body?
Never heard that. Yeah, never heard that 28-gram thing.
Yeah. So, and I'm paraphrasing and maybe misquoting, and I'm sure, people will make comments about that. But, I'm trying to make a point, not factual, is that this innate intelligence and that animates the living tissue. We have faith in that, to heal. If you cut yourself, you don't have to think about the millions of biochemical reactions are happening simultaneously, second per second, as the immune system comes in to heal that, sending fibrocytes to lay down collagen, elastin, blah, 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 blah. You're not thinking about that consciously. It just happens. Yeah. You break your leg, the medical doctor sets it, surgery if necessary, right? You mobilize it, 6 to 8 weeks later, that bone is healed. 100%.
Right, and
there's no conscious process involved in that.
And people have, like, the surgery doesn't heal, the cast doesn't heal,
the body heals.
Right, it just creates the environment for the body to heal.
Right,
Yeah.
and newsflash, right? I don't heal.
Right.
You don't heal.
Right.
Right? That's magic. When you think that somebody else has the power to heal you, that's magical thinking. Yeah. And any practitioner who embodies the concept that they are a healer is a magician, and they're deluding themselves. The body heals itself, the innate intelligence of the body. Now, where you want to go with that existentially, as far as religious or spiritual beliefs, that's up to the individual. That's up to the institutions. That's up to religion. I don't have to call it anything other than an innate intelligence, because my brain, the way it functions now, right, I don't have the capacity or the knowledge or the information to ascertain what it is that created me, what it is that created this known universe. I can't do it. And people try to make up stuff about it all the time, and that's fine. And I actually resonate with some of those belief systems, and so I take that to be a relative truth for me as I move along my ascension, of conscious growth and awareness. But I don't know if any of those are true, really. Yeah. How will I know until the moment, my life force leaves this body, and if it's just lights out and there's no consciousness ever again, then it's a one-time deal. We're here once. And if that's true, even more reason to take care of yourself. Because there's an old Buddhist philosophy or prose that says your existence in this universe in a physical manifested form as a human body is like, I don't know, again, I'm probably misquoting, but I like to exaggerate, I don't know, like 10,000 times greater than a turtle coming up in the middle of the ocean in a raging storm with 100-foot swells, with a 3-meter bamboo floating on the ocean, and one turtle in that ocean, and him coming up and sticking his head through that circle. That the odds of your existence are like 100 some odd times greater than that happening. So even without the concept of the transmigration of the soul, right? And thinking about doing your soul's work or whatever you need to do so that you don't have to incarnate again, or you can work through your karma. That's all great stuff, and I hold to that. But even if it's not, right? If this is all we got, eat right, think right, sleep right, and move right. Mm-hmm. That includes nutrition, homeopathics, chiropractic, exercise, good food, meditation, mindfulness practices, love, all of those things. Right? So we can improve the quality of the experience we're having. Because if we can't be in joy, in love, and at peace, how can we expect our families to, or our communities to, right? We're so busy being against war instead of for peace. We're fighting cancer. We're fighting everything. We're at war with, if you're at war with something, you're resisting. Yeah. There's resistance. It's inherent in the word, right? So when are we going to stop fighting? The war on bad nutrition, the war on drugs. They know that when they started the war on drugs, the drug problem became worse. So anyways, I'm kind of going off on.
Well, we're clearly on the same page here. And, I think that, to speak to what you just brought up, I think that we are totally 100% smack dab in the midst of this kind of shift, awakening.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I think that it's funny because, reflecting back like 10 years ago, I heard people talking about like this shift and like people, awakening of consciousness.
The shift network came about as a result of that.
Right. And, I remember I was like, oh, like when is it going to happen? I was like looking at the calendar, like, is it going to be like doomsday 2012? Like, right. But it's not a light switch that just, it is happening. Yes. We are doing it. It is now. And I think that we all kind of resonate and know that to be true. And it just puts a lot of...
more than others.
I mean, there's a lot of pessimism in the world,
Yeah.
And yeah.
But again, and that's where all these great teachings come into place. Yeah. I mean, the greatest teaching, fundamental, underlying principle that I get from Buddhism is compassion. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And without compassion first for ourselves, how can we have it for anybody else? Yeah. If we're not taking care of and treating and respecting and loving and honoring ourselves as sacred, how can we treat anything sacred, including Mother Earth? That's why she's dying. Because we've lost touch with that connection to source, however you define that, even if it's just an inward awareness of something inside yourself that is peaceful, that is loving, and that is joyful. And when you touch that place, right, that's the existential moment where you realize it's not about what we do, what we have, what we drive, what we wear, any of those things. It just matters as who we are in essence. And when we experience that as our essence, we walk and move and have our being in that essence, that presence, which is a huge buzzword now, thanks to Eckhart Tolle and all of his teachings, is to bring back people to that present moment that now is all we have. That everything in the past is the past, whether it's 5 minutes or 50 years ago, and anything in the future, right? It hasn't happened yet. That's why the present is called a present, because it's a gift. And staying, anchored in that moment and bringing ourselves constantly back to the now, to the quality of the experience we're having now, not tomorrow, after I have more money or have that car or have that relationship or have that 150th day skiing in me or whatever it is that we hang our coats on and say, this is me, right? This is me. It's my experiences and all of that collective of who that is. It's not that. But you don't know that until you sit down, be still, be quiet, and breathe. And you experience something beyond all of those things that has so much greater ability to give you health, right, and wellness. Because to me, everything that's physical ailments are really just the body's attempt to get us to give our attention back to ourselves, within ourselves. So everything that happens to us actually happens for us and as a gift, as an opportunity and potential for growth and healing. But to understand that the healing is ultimately still going to come from within, because if we get the awareness back into ourselves and then we step outside of ourselves to think that that healing is going to come from something, someone else, that's where we get misguided again, back to projecting our power onto something outside of ourselves to ultimately do what needs to be, the work that needs to be done within ourselves. But we're not trained this. This isn't taught in school. Mindfulness isn't taught in school, right? Metacognition is not taught in school. Quantum physics, it's not. And so until it is, right, people have to, through their own suffering and through their own crisis, have to find, right, these pathways, these practitioners that will lead them back to themselves. And unfortunately, there's so much ego out there that even in our professions of the holistic health realm, there's a lot of people that is that a word? Think that they're the ones that are doing the healing, and then people become dependent on practitioners, gurus, or whatever.
We are so on the same page, Zach. You're like totally speaking my language, but much more quickly and passionately than I typically do.
I'm watching the clock, and I'm like, okay, I'm talking fast.
But obviously, like you're sitting here because we resonate, because we vibe, and it was, we came to Carbondale like. We moved back to Carbondale. You were here before, obviously.
About 40 years ago when I went to school here.
But like we kind of landed here around similar times, and we were kind of brought together. And like, you would, I was told like, you guys should meet Zach. He's kind of same wavelength as you. And I was like, what does that mean? Like, yeah, right. No one's the same wavelength as me. But sure enough, stepped into your office and met you and connected with you, and we are. And I think that a lot of people tuning in we are on the same wavelength. But I'd like to kind of get into, for people who are listening thus far, know that you're not like your typical chiro guy, so like,
okay, let me speak to that.
Walk us through kind of like your practical philosophy now today.
Okay, so that's easy. Because this is what I tell every new patient that steps in my door. And by the way, I am doing Meet the Practitioner at the 3rd Street Center next Wednesday night.
Yeah, this will be a little bit late.
Yeah,
but,
well, that's okay.
There's always a time and place to meet Zach.
Yeah. But the real reason I brought that up was not really a plug, but more for the information that I'm going to give there is the information I'm going to give you, is the information I give all my new patients. And basically, I feel this quickening happening, like you talked about on the planet, right? This consciousness, right? That kind of has to happen. It has to happen sooner than later. And if it doesn't, it was not meant to be or whatever. And so, I have to pull in the reins of my fear for my family and my kids and their future when I see what's happening to the earth and I see what's happening to our own health. And at some level I have to, practice what I preach and bring my awareness back to the present moment. What can I do now? Right? Be here now in this. I am here now in this. Whatever this is, whether it's a feeling I'm having, whether it's my own physical ailments, illnesses, or things that are challenging for me, and how quickly I want to reach out to somebody else to fix me. But then I realize that everybody's hands are the hands of the divine. Okay, that's an existential thought, but they're the hands of this one consciousness, right? So by you putting your hands on me and giving me nutritional advice, right, is me going within because I have the philosophical construct. It's not even a philosophical construct. It's fact that my body does the healing, right? And a good practitioner, right, will encourage the patient, client, or whatever to have that ultimate understanding that they're ultimately responsible for their health, and we're just trying to help your body because it's right out of Gray's Anatomy, right? The central nervous system controls directly or indirectly every single function of the body, right? And that the body is a self-healing, self-regulating organism. We already kind of talked about that, right? So what could interfere with the body's ability to be able to communicate with itself, right? Well, every nerve in your body, with the exception of the cranial nerves, come out of every single spinal nerve root. If you have a subluxation, a misaligned vertebrae that's stuck and fixated, not in the proper place, that can cause, right, some type of pressure on that nerve, therefore interfering with the communication process between the brain cell and the tissue cell, right? Pretty simple, pretty basic. If you've got subluxation throughout your spine, wherever that nerve root goes, to whatever group of nerves that it goes to, whatever organ systems it go to, they are either not getting the signal from the brain on how to self-heal and self-regulate and create homeostasis, and or there's something that happens exogenously to that organ system, that tissue or cell, an injury or whatever, and the communication can't get to the brain that there's a problem, then that interferes with the body's ability to self-heal and self-regulate. Does that make sense? It's pretty common sense, right? Yeah. So what chiropractors do is we remove that interference through a specific spinal adjustment. And as many chiropractors as there are, there's as many techniques, right? Unfortunately, we've kind of moved away from educating patients about innate intelligence, right? Because it's too woo-woo or too philosophical. Well, and now chiropractors are wearing white smocks and they have, stethoscopes around their neck and they're adjusting people till they're out of pain and they say, well, come see me again when you're in pain.
Right. And I think that, a lot of us, myself included at least, have the experience of going to a chiropractor, getting an adjustment and saying, the chiropractor saying, I'll see you in 4 days for another one. And then a week later for another one. And it's like, walk me through the understanding of how these subluxations are corrected through physical adjustments and how they can maybe uncorrect, discorrect.
Right.
And why someone might need to have that continuity following up.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's hard. Let me rephrase that. It's been a challenge, and it's always a challenge, and it goes back to what we talked about earlier, of how do you educate people to understand how things work if they've never been taught. Right? So much of our chiropractic is about taking the time, and a lot of people don't want to take the time to do it. I do, to educate our patients about how the body actually works. And you know what I'm saying? So
from a physical.
I'm going there. I'm going there.
Cool.
So from that less than 10% of the nervous system being dedicated to sensation, pain being a lousy indicator of health. Just because there's no pain doesn't mean the subluxation isn't still there to some degree. And until you correct it to the place of where it will maintain its position and proper alignment, right, then it's always going to want to move back toward out. And the more chronic the condition is, the more morphologically, big word, right, that the body has had to adapt to that malposition, it gets used to being there. So soft tissue responds morphologically. That just means it changes to adapt to that new position because it was unable to correct it on its own. Now that brings up another big question.
Same with the rest, same with all of the body.
Right,
we're always adapting to whatever our environment
of course.
is. Yeah.
And sometimes maladaptively,
Right.
But it's the body's intelligence just doing what it knows to do because the innate intelligence is intelligent as it is, as it's designed and is flowing through our system, does what it does via genetic predisposition and parts of the brain that are below, beyond, above the conscious mind, and they're part of the autonomic nervous system. So we are evolving as human beings. I mean, with technology and all that we've done, human beings and human brains do not think, feel, act do anything like we did even 100 years ago. And yet all of human existence can fit on, right? Alex Degrassi's, a calendar of,
Right,
of,
like
of
10 seconds or whatever.
of the last 10 seconds of
Yeah.
December 31st, right? All of human history.
Yeah.
And yet in the last 150 years, the evolution of mankind and our technology and our understanding of our place in the universe, I mean, there's still people that think the earth is flat, right? And so there's a whole new movement around those lines. And yet most of us look back and look at those people and go, oh my God, seriously, right? But not that long ago, if you thought anything different, right, you were sometimes killed as a witch or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So there's this evolution in our consciousness, and I think our body, changes with that, genetically and epigenetically, and that's a whole nother podcast that we could do. But so that's what happens. So
we're talking about education.
Yes.
And that
No, I get it.
huge part.
Oh, that huge part.
Yeah.
But in a nutshell, yeah, it takes repetitive adjustments until the body kind of gets it.
So
that the bone needs to be here and not there, but you have to tell it. It's a neuromuscular re-education process, and it takes more than what it takes to get you out of pain to actually have that happen. And a 50-year research showed that it takes
just
12
to make sure that I understand
Yep.
properly. So it's a matter of educating the consciousness of a patient and also educating the body.
Yeah, right. You got it.
You got to educate like the mind and the body.
It's a paradigm shift. And we've been around for 110 years, and people still think we're quacks, and yet there's all kinds of the vertebral subluxation complex is so well studied.
Yeah.
And what it does and how it works and how it affects every cell, tissue, and organ of your body.
Yeah.
And so it seems very easy conceptually to me. Obviously, I live it every day.
Yeah.
But when somebody comes in, they go, I don't get it, and then I try to help them get it. So
one more question
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of following up on that.
Yeah.
Like if the body does, and we both believe that the body does have that innate intelligence, like why does it need the education in the form of an adjustment multiple times? Like just because, like, I have the perception that, it's like things just kind of slip to where they used to be or where they tend to fall based on where you've educated me on where my feet are.
And I don't know if this is a good analogy. I'm just trying to think
Yeah.
of something mechanical that we use that if we don't maintain it and keep it up and keep it lubricated and keep it aligned, how that has deleterious effects structurally on that machine, say a bicycle.
Yeah, you introduced the analogy of the cog, and if your chain is a little bit off, then the cog is going to wear down a
lot
little
faster
bit, and then your
and a lot
chain's
more.
going to wear out.
And you're going to have to replace them, like
Yeah.
i.e. a joint or a hip or a knee joint, because of improper biomechanics. It's not like, okay, why does one hip go out and not the other? Why does one need to be surgically replaced and the other one's perfectly fine? Well, the doctors don't look at alignment, leg length discrepancies, pronation problems, increased Q angles, drop in the sacrum base, creating compensatory lateral deviation of the spine. That's our realm. We look at how the body relates to gravity in 3 dimensions, and we try to optimize it. Right? That's the structural, one of the ways I do mechanical chiropractic, right? And I teach and educate that. It's called chiropractic biophysics and spinal biomechanics. A lot of chiropractors, if you're just adjusting the subluxation, that's the symptom. But how come that subluxation keeps coming back?
How come it does?
Right.
That's a great question. Like what?
Right.
Yeah. Talk to me why it
Well,
does.
because the mechanics are wrong. Because I went in there and replaced the cog and replaced the chain, but I didn't replace the shifting of the derailleur, right? So that wouldn't happen again. So if I don't change the mechanics and how you relate to gravity in 3 dimensions as you're moving through time and space, that subluxation that was a compensation for a greater global postural fault is just going to come back. And the longer it's been out and compensated and those changes in the connective tissue have changed in order to accommodate that new position, now I'm telling it to go back to here, and the body says, no, I've been here for a very long time. And if I do it enough, the body finally gets it and goes, okay. And it starts helping, right? As we break up scar tissue adhesions, we start to create the new neuromuscular re-education process. The new neural networks are starting to form for the bone being back in its original place, right? Then it starts to hold that position better.
So we're talking
Does that
about
make sense?
Yeah, we're talking about education of biomechanics and also probably
Brain,
and
neuromuscular re-education.
and to some extent like some techniques and exercises and postural
All of
awareness.
that. All
and
of
stuff.
that.
Yeah.
All of that. So let me go to the next level that defines the difference of what I'm doing. Okay, and again, this isn't a personal plug. This just
Yeah.
this has come to my awareness of doing the spinal pain.
You can. This is all about personal plugs.
Yeah. It's about serving the community. It's about getting the education out there so people can go, oh my God, I didn't realize that. I didn't know that about chiropractic. And they start flocking chiropractors everywhere. Whether it's my office or anybody, doesn't matter, right? The subluxation is a small thing. But when it affects your life long term, it's a big thing. And when there's a community of subluxated people and a community, and a country and a world that's subluxated, that's a humongous thing, right? And pain drives us, right? And unfortunately, it's my job to educate people beyond pain.
Yeah.
And so that goes, good segue into the next level for me. So after doing 25 years of mechanical stuff, right? And then finding some people getting and resolving their issues in a dozen adjustments, right? With something that should have taken years to heal and should have been killed in car accidents. And somebody coming in with a slight sprain in their knee, then they compensated for it and it kind of threw their back out a little bit. And 1 or 2 adjustments should have straightened that out with what I did for them. Right? And 6 months later, they're coming in with the same problem. And I noticed that big energy difference between the 2 patients.
What do you mean energy difference?
One person is like, woe is me, I'm a victim, this poor my knee, oh my back, I can't believe that person put that banana down that I slipped on. They're still holding this anger, this grudge, this frustration, this victimization, and they're not getting well. This person who should have been killed in a car accident that was not their fault, they're like better in 6 weeks. And they're saying, oh my God, I'm so grateful. I'm so lucky that wasn't killed. And my body will respond quickly to this. And I have such good support system in my body. And they heal. So all of a sudden I'm going, wait a minute
So
here.
state of mind is different.
Right.
Mood,
so
energy.
Where is the ultimate subluxation? It's between the ears. It's our mindset.
Yeah.
So I started delving. I had already been delving into it as a result of my own attempt to look for healing from my mental, physical, emotional, imprinting, scarring, wounding, whatever you want to call it, right? And have found that the only thing that stopped me from continuing to manifest physiological symptoms, dysfunctional relationships, accidents, right, was doing my own interpersonal growth work and really evolving and healing there. And so it was through that level of healing that a lot of my ailments started to magically and mysteriously resolve, self-resolve. What is that about? So that started getting me into the realm of quantum physics, epigenetics, neuroscience, and the study of neuroplasticity. Thank God for Dr. Joe Dispenza, who's taken all of this information and put it in a very digestible way that's changing lives all over this planet. And so studying that type of stuff and studying all of that to help me understand and gauge where it is that I need to grow and evolve in consciousness is what helped me heal, quote unquote, the physiological manifestations of putting all of my focus externally in my reality for creating the quality of the existence and experience that I'm having. And so I've started to introduce not only a technique, but I'm also teaching and helping and guiding people along those lines. So I give people these books. I give them a reading list. I talk to them about these very things. And one of the new techniques I do, called Corn-specific technique, addresses emotional, energetic blockages in the body. And through instrument adjusting and things like that are very low force for the people who don't like the structural work. But I still try to get people to understand biophysics and biomechanics. And I use less forceful adjustments to address those. Including continuing to correct, foot imbalances and leg discrepancies, put curves back into people's necks who were lost in a car accident that should be there. And all the research shows that we have a less life expectancy if we don't have the proper curves in our neck. So there's science to back all of this stuff. So the structural piece is very important to understand Newtonian physics. We do live in a third dimensional reality. We have to respect it. Digestion, we have to respect what we put in our body. It can't handle mercury, but it can handle, organic,
a lot of other
whole
stuff.
vegetables.
Well, it's amazing what we can handle that we're not, anyway.
And that's the amazing part of the body's ability to self-heal and self-regulate.
Yeah.
It puts up with an onslaught of a lot of stuff that we do to our bodies, minds, and spirits, right?
Yeah.
So that technique really addresses a lot of this stuff. It's just cranial stuff and looks at the body for imbalances everywhere. And of course, I can't correct all those with my chiropractic techniques. So that's when I refer to people like you and your wife, and homeopaths and acupuncturists and physical therapists, right? And if we tried everything conservative we can and the problem is still there, we use the allopathic model for diagnosis. They're great at it, and the instruments and the things that they have to diagnose it. You have a meniscal tear, right? That needs to be surgically repaired. Otherwise, that joint's going to break down and you're going to be having a new knee versus, right? So it's not this or that.
Right.
It's this and that. But it's working together to understand that we all have a piece in this pie called our wellness, right? To support each other in this. But I think for me, the most important thing is for the practitioner to educate the patient, right, about the innate inborn ability to self-heal and self-regulate. That's empowering, right? And that goes right along with the part that I was talking about in consciousness. People have to have that shift of awareness, right? That they're responsible. They are the masters of their own destiny. We can change programming that's in our mind. Neuroplasticity has been shown to be valid till the day we die. Our brains are neuroplastic till the moment the lights get turned off. You can teach an old dog new tricks, and neuroscience has proven that. So it's about my passion right now for this quickening process that I see as necessary, right, to reverse what we've programmed ourselves to believe. And it's apparent, right, outcomes. If you look at Earth as an organism and how we're taking care of it, it's a reflection of how we're taking care of ourselves individually.
Amen. How are we doing on time? I know that you've got an appointment coming up.
We're good.
We're pretty good.
Yeah, we're good.
What-
Did I answer your question or not?
Absolutely. And you opened up a whole kind of another dimension, of course. Yeah.
Whole another podcast.
There's a
Let's
few.
do a series.
There's a few. It would be fun to do a series. But as you were speaking, well, first of all, Joe Dispenza and the work that he's been doing, a lot, whenever I introduce myself and the work that I am passionate about, people are like, oh, you must know Joe Dispenza and his work. I'm like, actually, I've heard his name, but I don't really know what he does. And finally, I did read his latest book, Becoming Supernatural. And it's like, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And
Could you imagine if they taught that in school, if that was required reading?
Yeah, just like the human potential, supernatural. And it is just innate in all of us. And it's awakening that. This word that is
That was
kinda,
huge. That was
yeah.
huge what you just said. So I don't want any of the listeners to just kind of brush that by real quick.
Okay.
Because it really is about an awakening.
Yeah.
And it's an awakening to that knowledge
Right.
that we've been talking about for the last half an hour. It's awakening to that understanding and that knowingness that what all these great mystical, right? Joe's words is, I love to demystify the mystical, right? But the chakra system, people think that's woo-woo, right? The chakras are aligned with ganglion, nerve centers in the body, and they're all almost all associated with a significant endocrine gland, right? And now we know that. And we know that these centers actually have little minds of their own, right? And so they have their own kind of nucleus of intelligence to regulate that aspect of our body through the autonomic nervous system.
I actually had her name's Kat, and she's local here, and she does a lot of chocolate work, and she has some
chocolate work. I love chocolate.
Did I say chocolate?
Yeah, no, chocolate.
Chocolate work, and she's got some you would really be. I don't know if you know Kat Taylor.
No.
It's like a lot of essential oil stuff, chakra awakening, alignment.
Right.
We
and
had
I do
a
that,
good,
and I use tuning forks
we had a good
sound healing.
Conversation on the podcast about chakras
It's all
and chocolate.
Energy and light. Good.
Anyways, this word that keeps bubbling up in my mind is the placebo.
Yeah.
And
that was Joe's third book, by the
right.
way. You are the placebo.
And people hear this kind of stuff and think oh, it's just the placebo effect. And it's
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
No shit.
Yeah. Now you have to understand the science behind that conceptually. Because if you don't, why does the placebo work?
Right.
It's your brain. If you believe it's true, it's true. That is scientifically provable now, and that's what Joe's work is, and that's why he's having spontaneous healings of all kinds of stuff. It's not magic. This is not magic, folks.
Yeah, and people dismiss it. People
Right.
have dismissed it, but
Right.
that is the most pure self-healing realization of just like waking that up.
You can
inside
heal
of us.
anything without doing anything. I mean,
Right.
if you shatter your leg, that might be hard to piece that back together. You need a really good surgeon. But the healing of that after that fact and understanding how and why that you might have manifested that situation or experience in your life. And I mean, that may be a little too existential for a lot of people to look at why I manifested this injury, what it has to teach me, and where to take me on a soul
I've got a good
level.
example of that. You know, flying over the handlebars of my mountain bike senior year of college, literally being thrown in a different direction, you know?
Yeah,
So,
literally,
I mean-
right. But see, I mean, you can look at that allegorically, or or whatever,
Yeah.
and say, yeah, oh, that's just synchronicity, or that's just you making something up about that, to say, yeah, and using that as a synchronistic moment. But what I'm saying is that all of the stuff that we're talking about is validated through our current scientific body of intelligence and information.
More and more so as time
Right.
goes on,
And it's what we were speaking of earlier, is that the old programming gets in the way of the new. Right. If you have a computer that's maxed out with the old program running in the background, and you're trying to put a new program into it, there's no RAM or whatever, I don't know, computer talk, there's no memory, there's no gigabytes left, right? You can't do it. But if you wipe that computer out and reset it, and then you put a new program in, it runs beautifully with no interference from the old program. So it runs cleanly and purely and easily and simply, right? So that's an analogy that I use with people, is that, and Joe talks about it all the time, what fires together wires together. And if for decades you believe something, a limiting thought, feeling, and belief that you've just now noticed is limiting to you, and you're like, God, I want to get that out of here, and you read Joe's book, and you're like, okay, how come I'm not healed? I read the book, I get it. Right? But you don't really believe it. It's not really hardwired into your programming, and it's the hardwiring that creates the thought. It's the thought that creates the chemicals. It's the chemicals that create a feeling. It's the feeling that creates more similar thoughts, that creates more similar chemicals. This is science. Mm-hmm. And until you understand that and you pattern interrupt, moment to moment to moment, through his metacognitive process of becoming aware of those limiting thoughts, feelings, beliefs, not beating ourselves up for having them just because we know better now, and then actually taking time to breathe and lean back into the love that's all around us, which sounds really woo-woo, but it's not, because it's everywhere. Take a walk in the woods. It's all you feel is that resonant frequency. And they're now doing stuff in Japan where they're taking people in psych wards and they're walking through the forest with them, and they're getting better results than shock therapy, drugs, behavioral psychology, and all the talk therapy combined, by walking through the woods. And just like a tuning fork, if you hit one, you put the other one next to it, it'll start resonating at that frequency. So if you're walking through the woods, and I can't remember what that frequency is, your body is going to remember and reawaken to the innate frequency in which you were born, because we are all nature. We're animals, and we've forgotten that we're not separate from nature. We are nature, and if we stop surrounding ourselves with so much electromagnetic frequencies that are throwing off that divine resonance, if you will, and start to resonate with it, because then everything starts to heal and just fall away. And the joy and the happiness and the peace becomes experiential. And then we want more of it. And so we put ourselves in those environments more often, and we change the programming. We change the imprinting.
Right. Back to what you said earlier about the main subluxation being between our ears and how the program is running.
And I couldn't deny that anymore. And so I have to educate my patients.
I mean, it's powerful stuff, and there's so many techniques and practices that can be possible and integrate into how we can support ourselves in remembering and reprogramming and rebooting and updating our thinking and beliefs, and that in and of itself can be overwhelming.
I was going to say that sounded exhausting. Just for saying that, and I'm exhausted every day from my efforts in all of those realms.
Yeah,
and yet I do it every day. I get up because I understand what it takes to actually make the change.
So walk me through that. When you say you do it, what is your kind of approach to rebooting and reprogramming, remembering your innate intelligence and awakening that? And how, what is...
First, I get adjusted. like once a week, but no less than twice a month, and I have since I was 17. Because if my nervous system is not optimized, if my brain isn't balanced neurologically, if I have subluxations interfering with the communication between my brain cells and my tissue cells, it doesn't matter how organic food I eat, it doesn't matter how long I meditate, it doesn't matter what books I read, it doesn't matter how much time I'm in nature, all of those things cannot, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of move into alignment or be utilized optimally if my nervous system isn't functioning optimally. Does that make sense? So the first thing in utero and the first thing in the embryo that forms is the brain and then in the spinal cord, right? From there, everything else's formation happens, right? So obviously I'm a little tainted toward the side of that, but that's science. And so it just makes sense to optimize the nervous system, right?
So step
Diet.
one, see a chiropractor.
Well, move right and exercise.
And be aligned and be aware
Yoga
of your
several times
body
a week, right? For a mindfulness practice and to keep myself moving, strong, and flexible, right? Cardiovascular fitness, right?
So you're if I'm hearing you correctly, and obviously I cut
eat right,
you
move
off,
right, sleep right,
yeah,
and think right.
It's just living. Your life is your awakening practice. You don't go out of your way to
No. And when I get off the mat, when I meditate, when I get off and I've done thousands of workshops, and they've all been an integral part of me coming to this place that I don't need another workshop,
right?
And yet at the same time, I'll go to more workshops.
When they speak to you,
right. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. So the next level of my conscious evolution, when I'm ready, and I'm kind of at the same valence energetically, something else will come along that will give me the opportunity for a new insight, a new awareness that I can add to my arsenal, right, of awareness, right, that will bring me to even a higher state of peace, love, and joy. Right? Or remembrance of that's what I am. See, let me clarify something really quick, because this is really important. We're not trying to become something. We're trying to reawaken to and remember what the truth about who and what we really are.
Amen. Yeah, that's
an
important one.
It's a really important one
because I think
because in my ultimate belief system, there's nothing to fix, heal, transform, or change.
Right. And
the essence of who we are is perfect.
And that is totally contradictory to a lot of the self-help messages in the world today.
Absolutely.
It's like we need to work on ourselves and fix ourselves and, get rid of our traumas and do this and that and let it all go and work.
Yeah. Integrate and embrace your traumas through unconditional felt perception instead of intellectually trying to understand it. One of my greatest spiritual teachers said, look, if you can master these three things, your life will dramatically shift in the quality of the experience you're having. No expectations, right? No judgments. Yeah, right.
I'll work on that for the rest of my
life.
No
judgments.
Yeah.
And delete the need to understand. We all want to understand. That's how science, that's how we progress, is we learn about how things work. Yeah. But the need, it's this, I can't move forward until I understand this. You've seen people like that. You've gotten into your own patterns in your life. It's like, when I get this piece, then I'll move on. I'll let go of this when I can understand why this happened to me. Oh my God, that's important and that's relevant and it can be. But if you get fixated there,
it's the ultimate roadblock,
it's the ultimate gerbil wheel.
And it's getting out of that is thought away.
It's a thought away, but it's a thought after a thought after a thought after a thought. That goes back to what we were talking about. It's neuroplasticity. It's understanding, right? That we're programmed. I mean, almost 6 decades. I was programmed during the first 7 years of my life when I was purely an emotional being. I didn't have an awareness cognitively to put context in to any of the emotional imprinting that was happening by my mother's father's preachers and teachers. Mm-hmm. Then all of a sudden I go to get school age and I'm told to become mental. Learn your ABCs, 1, 2, 3, do this, do this, do this. And us boys, we were wounded even more by telling big boys don't cry. You need to be strong. You need to play sports. You need to, not show your emotions. You can be angry, but that's it. And then we reach puberty. Oh my God. Right? Then we become physical. Now everything matters. Mm-hmm. Right? And we are only, as Joe says, 0.00 to 13 decimals particle and 99.00 to 13 decibels energy. And yet space, but we focus on the particle instead of the wave. Why aren't we focusing on the 99.999% of what we really are? And that's all physics as well. So my point is that we become mental, physical beings. And we stop our emotional development around the age of 7, and it's not taught in our schools to be emotionally intelligent. We don't get it from our mothers, fathers, and preachers and teachers, right? Because they didn't get it, they don't understand it, and it's been lost. And so we spend the rest of our lives with everything material mattering, right? We got to be smart, we got to be educated, we can figure everything out with the mind, right? But that's it's an instrument to be used by the soul, not the other way around. Yeah. And so as we learn to move into that understanding, things start to shift really, really quantumly.
And to me, the key word there is the understanding.
Yes.
It's not a work or a practice or a doing. It's more of just a way of understanding and relating.
And it's having that aha moment. It goes back to what we originally talked about. Until you experience it. See, I've been preaching and teaching this stuff for a long time. But as soon as you push my trigger that said abandonment, I reacted with anger. Because that's the only emotion I was really allowed to have. So a lot of men hide behind anger, but what's below the anger is usually deep, deep, deep sadness. But I have not programmed myself enough to be able to, when somebody does something that feels like it's abandoning me, I start crying. Because then, right, I'll be looked upon as weak, wimpy, wounded, whatever the society says. That's what a man is if he cries, right? So even though I know better, for years, even though intellectually I understood a lot of what I'm speaking about, since a very early age, I've been on this path. When the button got pushed, right, I reacted instead of responded from an old program.
Yeah, back to that experience versus book reading.
Right.
You're pointing towards an experience.
Right, so not a mental experience, but actually having a life experience where the rubber meets the road. Yeah. And within a context of a relationship, my own health, right, my business, how abundance flows to me, those are all the key effects that will give you information and feedback as to how well you're actually doing.
So I know that you've got to get running here, even though we've opened up so many cans of worms that we could potentially, enjoy, and we will at another time, I trust. But wrapping things up here, what is the ultimate kind of take-home message that you try to encapsulate and not shove down people's throats, but invite them to digest? I mean, I hear it in everything that you say, but if you could kind of encapsulate it.
Right. So when I took a moment to breathe, I felt sadness. And the sadness is from a place of knowing that I'm talking to myself more than anybody else right now.
I have that same feeling so often.
And that some of the energy behind how I talk, I know, is from a place of hurry up before it's too late, right? Yeah. And I just turned 59. I'm in the last year of my 50s. And there's an awareness of what would the quality of my life have been like if I would have gotten some of the stuff I'm talking about a little sooner. And then somehow moving into a place of a feeling of loss as a result of that awareness. Even though I talked about now is the only moment that we have. Right? So I'm simultaneously feeling sadness, but in joy. And that's the takeaway.
Love it.
Is to love yourself unconditionally. Yeah. Because no matter what the judgments are we have of ourselves, where we think we are in our path of awakening or not at all, or maybe this conversation sparked with somebody an awareness for the first time in their life and they're 90 years old and they just heard this. And they thought to themselves, what if I would have known this later? And the anger that must come up from what we've been, overwhelmed with in our society and in our world. Or the 20-year-old who says, thank God I heard this. I'm going to go get Joe Dispenza's book and I'm going to go get adjusted tomorrow. And it changed the course of their life and the experience that they're having. Now that light bulb, right? That dimmer switch that I just turned up in that person, their light energy is now glowing, and all of a sudden somebody's gonna come up and go, wow, who are you? What are you all about? I want to get to know you. And all of a sudden they create a relationship with somebody, and that person says, I just heard this podcast and blah, 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 blah. You know, you might want to pick up Joe's book, or you might want to listen to Ben's podcast, or you might want to go see this guy, Dr. Zach, or you might want to just go to a chiropractor, right? And it's that 100th monkey thing. It's the effect of lighting one candle and then lighting everybody else's candle and just seeing this whole glow of this collective consciousness. So I just want people to take away that it's not too late for any of us or all of us or this planet, that really healing, quote unquote, and I use that in parentheses because I just said that I don't believe that there is such thing as the need for healing or even forgiveness. That's radical forgiveness, to understand that there's nothing really to forgive because everything's happening for us and not to us. You know, if we can come from that place of taking full responsibility for everything that's happened in our lives, that we've somehow attracted it or manifested it from some place of either pre-programmed consciousness or what we've learned, that we can go easy on ourselves. We can give ourselves a break knowing that we come by whoever we are, whatever we think and feel, very, very honestly. But now we have no excuse when we have the knowledge and the understanding that the brain's neuroplastic, and when we optimize the nervous system, we can change the course of our lives. And again, it's not about fixing or transforming, remember? It's about increasing the quality or changing the quality of the experience we're having in this moment. However people define that. That could be whatever it looks like out there. It doesn't matter what you do. You could do nothing and be much more at peace, in love, and in joy than somebody who's doing 1,000 things that we all have FOMO about, that we're seeing on Facebook, and we look at somebody else's life and go, damn, I wish my life was like that. My life was that exciting. I was that beautiful. I had that many friends. My car looked like that. Those people could be the most miserable people in the world, hanging their hats again on all of those things that they do and say that they are, because they're so insecure. They have no sense of self-worth that's further past their skin and what they have. And so to be able to move into that awareness that they're worthy, that they're valid, that their life matters, that they're beautiful, and that they can, quote unquote, heal by understanding that there's nothing to heal, that they're perfect, complete, and whole. And the only way to get there is by practicing unconditional self-acceptance.
The end.
The end.
Well, Dr. Zach, where can people find you? Like website and stuff? You've got one, right?
Yeah, it's actually, I was just speaking to the person who's getting that up. It'll be up and running next week. It's CashinChiropractic.com. My last name, Cashin, Cashin, Chiro, Chiro, short for chiropractic. Chiro is a Greek word meaning hand, by the way, the practice of the use of the hands to reduce and eliminate nerve interference. So CashinChiropractic.com. My email is cashinchiro@gmail.com. And yeah,
excellent.
That's it.
So happy that you came over and we dove into this stuff. And
Yeah.
I do hope that we get a chance to go back and dive deeper into various assets.
Yeah, and I just want to put the invitation out there that I'm also starting in January a men's group.
Well,
to allow men to be able to come and talk about these things and have a safe place to explore these feelings and emotions, because they may not be in a social networked group or whatever that allows men to explore the stuff they would like to, but they don't feel safe in doing it and don't know about these things. So the main purpose is to have an experiential,
cool. Maybe I'll be there.
Yeah. I hope you will be.
Yeah,
because it's going to be really powerful and profound. And the other thing is, if you reach out to me, don't feel like it's necessarily to become a chiropractic patient. I'm there available to be a friend, right? A guide, a teacher, whatever I can do to help serve this community in becoming aware of the things that I'm becoming aware of. And so we can all get together and practice together, because practice, you have to practice.
Yeah, I love when you talked earlier about how you are speaking to yourself, because I have that feeling all the time. It's like, oh my gosh, I say what I most need to hear.
Yeah, I teach what I need to learn.
Yeah.
And just because I have a great well, not great. I have an ability to articulate some of this stuff, and I think quite well, and this was hard to take an hour and just kind of go. There's so many different areas we can go of what I've spoke to, but I do have a good way of being able to articulate some of the stuff to help guide people and finding some of this information and things like that. And then I want to create a forum with my men's group to be able to all sit down and talk about these things.
Awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
Great.
All right. Well,
Thanks,
Zach,
man.
Thanks again. Peace and love. Until next time.
Yeah, brother.
Yeah.
Solidarity.